The email notification pinged on my phone at exactly 7:43 a.m. on my 28th birthday. I was standing in my tiny galley kitchen, making coffee before my shift at the medical clinic where I worked as a physician's assistant. The subject line read, "Thank you for your purchase. Barcelo Maya Grand Resort." I stared at the screen, confused. I had not booked a resort. I had not purchased anything, and I definitely had not spent $8,347 on an all-inclusive trip to Mexico. My name is Jessica, and I am 28 years old. I have worked in healthcare for 6 years, climbing from medical receptionist to certified physician's assistant through sheer determination and student loans that still wake me up at night in a cold sweat. I live in a 600 square foot apartment in Denver, drive a 1-2-year-old Civic, and pack my lunch every single day, because that is what financial responsibility looks like when you are building a life from scratch. My parents had not called yet. Not that I expected them to. They had forgotten my birthday 3 years running now, always with elaborate excuses that somehow made me feel guilty for even noticing, but they had remembered something. They had remembered my credit card number. I clicked on the email with shaking hands. My coffee forgotten on the counter. The confirmation showed a booking for 2 adults at a luxury resort in Riviera Maya. 7 nights. All-inclusive. Premium ocean view suite. Spa packages. Excursion credits. Premium liquor package. The names on the reservation were Linda and Robert Thorne. My parents. Charged to a credit card ending in 4,829. My credit card. The one I had given them access to exactly once. 3 years ago. When my father's car broke down and he needed emergency repairs, I had added him as an authorized user temporarily, planning to remove him once the repair was paid off. That was $450. This was $8,347. The charge had posted 2 days ago, 2 days before my birthday, and nobody had thought to mention it. I called my mother first, my hands gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice bright and cheerful in a way that made my stomach twist. "Jessica. Hello, sweetie. What's up? Did you charge a vacation to Mexico on my credit card?" The words came out flat, emotionless. There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear her mental gears shifting. "Oh, that. Yes, honey. Your father and I really needed a break. We've been under so much stress lately, with everything going on with Melissa's wedding planning. You know how exhausting that's been for us. We figured you wouldn't mind helping out since you don't have any major expenses right now." Melissa, my younger sister, the golden child who had gotten a $40,000 wedding budget while I had received a card with $50 in it when I graduated from my PA program. The sister who lived rent-free in my parents' basement with her fiancé while I paid $1,400 a month for an apartment the size of their garage. Mom, that's over $8,000. On my credit card. Without asking me. Well, we thought about asking. But we know how you get about money. You're always so worried about every little thing. We figured it would be easier to just book it and tell you after. Consider it an early Christmas gift to us. You're always saying family should support each other. The logic was so twisted it took me a moment to even process it. They had stolen from me, and were now framing it as me being unsupportive if I objected. "It's my birthday today," I said quietly. "Did you know that?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Is it? Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. Things have just been so busy with the wedding planning. You know we love you. We'll make it up to you when we get back from the trip. Speaking of which, we leave tomorrow, so I need to finish packing. We can talk about all this when we return. Okay?" She hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, still holding my phone, trying to understand what had just happened. My parents had charged a luxury vacation to my credit card without permission, forgotten my birthday in the process, and somehow made me feel like I was being difficult for bringing it up. The financial implications hit me in waves. $8,347 was nearly 3 months of my rent. It was 6 months of my car insurance and gas. It was a significant chunk of my student loan payments that I made religiously every month, slowly chipping away at the $87,000 I still owed from my education. An education I had funded entirely myself while my parents paid for Melissa's state university tuition, her sorority dues, her study abroad semester in France. I pulled up my credit card app and stared at the charge. The balance that had been $2,300, manageable and on track to be paid off by spring, was now $10,647. My available credit was nearly maxed out. My carefully maintained credit score was about to take a hit, and my parents were packing for a beach vacation they had stolen from me. I called the credit card company immediately. The customer service representative listened patiently as I explained the situation, my voice remarkably steady, considering the panic coursing through my veins. "I understand your frustration, Miss Thorne," she said, her tone professionally sympathetic. "However, since Robert Thorne is listed as an authorized user on your account, technically this charge is not fraudulent. He had permission to use the card." "Permission from 3 years ago for a $400 car repair," I said. "Not permission to charge an $8,000 vacation without telling me." "I understand. But legally, authorized user status doesn't expire unless you specifically remove them from the account. Your best option would be to contact the resort directly and see if they'll allow a cancellation. Most all-inclusive packages have cancellation policies, though you may face penalties depending on how close you are to the travel date." The resort was less helpful. The reservation was non-refundable, booked during a promotional period that required full payment up front. The earliest departure date was tomorrow. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You could try to resell the reservation," the booking agent suggested, "but with less than 24 hours notice, that would be extremely difficult." "I'm sorry, but once payment has been processed for these promotional packages, our policy is quite firm." I hung up and sat on my couch, staring at my phone. $8,347. Gone. Just like that. Because my parents had decided they deserved a vacation, and I was the one who should pay for it. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Talk to your father. We really think you're overreacting about this. We're family. We'll pay you back after the trip. Promise." I stared at the message, thinking about all the other promises that had never materialized. The promise to help with my college expenses after I had watched them pay for Melissa's entire undergraduate degree. The promise to reimburse me for the bridesmaid dress I had bought for Melissa's engagement party, a $300 monstrosity I wore once. The promise to acknowledge my PA certification with something more than a text message while they threw Melissa a party when she got an entry-level marketing job that paid $12 an hour. I called my best friend, Andrea. We had met during our clinical rotations in nursing school before I specialized into physician assistant work. She answered on the second ring. "Happy birthday. I was just about to call you. Are we still on for dinner tonight?" I started crying. Not the gentle, pretty kind of crying from movies, but the ugly, gasping kind that comes from years of suppressed hurt finally breaking through. Andrea's voice shifted immediately from cheerful to concerned. "Jessica, what happened? Talk to me." I told her everything. The credit card charge, the forgotten birthday, my mother's dismissive response, the non-refundable reservation. Andrea listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I loved most about her. When I finally finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Okay," she said, her voice taking on the decisive tone I recognized from watching her handle difficult patients. "First, you need to remove your father from your credit card immediately. Today. Right now, actually. Second, you need to decide whether you're going to let them get away with this." "What choice do I have?" I asked, wiping my face with the back of my hand. "The charge already went through. The resort won't refund it. I can't afford to fight this legally." "You have more choices than you think," Andrea said. "But first, let's talk about what this really is. This isn't just about the money, Jessica. This is about years of your parents treating you like a bank account while treating Melissa like a daughter. This is about them stealing from you and then making you feel guilty for being upset about it. This is about boundaries that should have been set a long time ago." She was right. I had known she was right even before I called her, but hearing someone else say it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "What do I do?" I asked. "You start by documenting everything," Andrea said. "Take screenshots of the charge, of the text messages, of every communication. Then you remove your father as an authorized user. Then you tell your parents that they have 30 days to reimburse you for the full amount, or you'll be pursuing legal action. I can't sue my own parents, I protested. Can't you? Andrea asked. Jessica, they literally stole from you. They charged thousands of dollars to your credit card without permission, on your birthday no less, and then told you that you were overreacting for being upset. If a stranger did this, you wouldn't hesitate to report it as fraud. Why should family get a pass for behavior that would be criminal if anyone else did it? I thought about my student loans. I thought about my carefully maintained budget, about every sacrifice I had made to build a stable life. I thought about Melissa's upcoming wedding, funded entirely by our parents while I had received $50 and a card for my PA graduation. I hung up with Andrea and immediately called my credit card company. The representative who answered was patient as I explained that I needed to remove an authorized user from my account. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to know the whole story. Within 10 minutes, my father's access to my credit card was permanently revoked. It felt like closing a door that should have been locked years ago. Next, I opened a document on my laptop and began documenting everything. Screenshots of the charge, screenshots of my mother's text messages, a detailed timeline of every conversation I could remember about money over the past few years. The more I wrote, the more I remembered. And the more I remembered, the angrier I became. There was the time my grandmother had sent me $500 for my 25th birthday. My mother had offered to deposit it for me since I was working a double shift that day. I never saw that money. When I asked about it months later, she said it had gone toward household bills during a difficult time. But that same month, Melissa had gotten a spa day package for her birthday that cost at least $300. There was my college graduation. My grandparents had given my mother $2,000 to pass along to me, money intended to help me start my career. I received $200 and a speech about how the rest had been needed for family emergencies. But there had been no emergencies that I could recall, just Melissa's sudden need for a new laptop and a shopping trip for her upcoming job interviews. There was the car situation from 2 years ago. My 15-year-old Honda had finally died, and I had been saving for a down payment on something newer. My mother had asked to borrow $1,500 to help Melissa and her fiancé with their security deposit on a new apartment. She promised to pay me back within 3 months. I never saw that money again, and I had to wait another 6 months to save enough for my current car. The pattern was so clear now that I couldn't believe I had missed it for so long. Every time I had something, every time I was close to getting ahead, my mother found a way to redirect those resources to Melissa. And I had let her because I had been conditioned to believe that asking for what was mine was selfish. I pulled up my bank statements and credit card statements from the past 5 years and began calculating the grandmother's birthday money, the graduation gift, the car loan, smaller amounts here and there that I had written off as family helping family. By the time I finished, the number on my screen made me feel physically ill. Over the course of 5 years, approximately $23,000 had been taken from me and given to Melissa. That didn't even include the Mexico vacation. When you added that in, the total was over $31,000. $31,000 that could have paid off a significant portion of my student loans. $31,000 that could have been a down payment on a house. $31,000 that represented years of working overtime shifts, skipping meals to save money, and wearing the same clothes until they literally fell apart. I looked around my tiny apartment, at the thrift store furniture and the secondhand kitchen appliances, at the life I had built through sheer force of will with no help from anyone, and something inside me crystallized into pure determination. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to smooth things over. I wasn't going to make it easy for them to pretend this hadn't happened. I opened a new email and began typing. The message was addressed to both my parents, with my sister copied. I kept my tone professional, almost clinical, as I laid out exactly what had happened. The unauthorized charge to my credit card, the forgotten birthday, the pattern of financial abuse I had documented going back 5 years. I included specific amounts, specific dates, specific instances where money intended for me had been redirected to Melissa. I gave them 30 days to reimburse me for the full amount of the vacation charge. I informed them that my father had been removed as an authorized user on my credit card, and would not be reinstated. I made it clear that if the money was not repaid within 30 days, I would be pursuing legal action for theft and fraud. I ended the email with a single line that felt both terrifying and liberating to write. I will no longer be participating in a family dynamic where I am treated as a resource to be exploited, rather than a daughter to be loved. My finger hovered over the send button for a long moment. This was it. This was the point of no return. Sending this email would change everything. It would shatter the carefully maintained fiction that we were a normal, loving family. It would force everyone to acknowledge what had been happening in the shadows for years. But the alternative was to keep silent, to keep pretending, to keep being the one who sacrificed while Melissa took and my parents enabled. The alternative was to wake up 5 years from now, still struggling, still being bled dry, still convincing myself that this was normal. I hit send. The email disappeared from my screen, and I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. There was no taking it back now. The response came within 20 minutes. My phone started buzzing with such frequency that I had to silence it completely. Text messages poured in. First from my mother, then from my sister, then from my father, who rarely texted at all. I forced myself to wait an hour before looking at any of them. When I finally did, the pattern was exactly what I had expected. My mother's messages oscillated wildly between guilt-tripping and rage. "How could you do this to your family?" One read. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." Another said, "You're going to destroy this family over money. I raised you better than this." The cognitive dissonance was stunning. She had stolen over $30,000 from me, but I was the one destroying the family by asking for it back. My sister's messages were more direct. "You're a selfish bitch," one said. "Mom and Dad needed that vacation. They've been so stressed planning my wedding, and you can't even help them relax for 1 week. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to ruin everything." I read that message 3 times, trying to find any hint of self-awareness. My parents had stolen from me to fund a vacation because they were stressed about planning a wedding they were already paying $40,000 for. And somehow, I was the villain in this scenario. My father's single text was brief. "Your mother is very upset. Please call and apologize so we can work this out as a family." Not, "I'm sorry for charging your credit card without permission." Not, "We'll pay you back immediately." Just a request that I apologize for having the audacity to object to being robbed. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called my credit card company again and requested a new card with a different number. The old one would be deactivated within 24 hours. Then I changed all my banking passwords, set up two-factor authentication on every account, and enrolled in credit monitoring services. If my parents had been willing to commit credit card fraud once, I had no reason to believe they wouldn't try again. Andrea called that evening. "How are you holding up?" she asked. I had forwarded her the email I sent, and screenshots of the responses. "I'm angry," I admitted, but also strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to fix things or make everyone else comfortable. I'm just holding my ground, and it feels terrifying and liberating at the same time. "Good," Andrea said firmly. "You deserve to hold your ground. What they did was theft, Jessica. Actual theft. The fact that they're making you feel guilty about it is textbook manipulation." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I had justified my parents' behavior, all the ways I had convinced myself that I was being oversensitive or demanding. I thought about the college fund money I had never seen, the graduation gift that had disappeared, the countless small thefts that added up to years of financial abuse. Around 2 in the morning, I got up and opened my laptop. I started researching family financial abuse, and what I found made my stomach turn. Every article I read described exactly what had been happening to me: the pattern of taking resources from one child to give to another, the gaslighting that made the victim question their own reality, the expectation that calling out the abuse was a greater sin than committing it. I learned that what my parents had done had a name: financial exploitation. And in some cases, it was actually criminal. I learned that many states had laws against financial abuse of adult children, particularly when it involved fraud or theft over certain amounts. I learned that I wasn't crazy for being upset, that my reaction was normal and justified. I also learned something else. I learned that patterns of financial abuse rarely stopped on their own, without intervention, without consequences. The behavior continued and often escalated. My parents would keep taking from me as long as I let them, and if I ever had children of my own, they would likely treat my kids the same way they had treated me, creating another generation of scapegoats and golden children. The next morning, I called a family law attorney whose name I found through a referral service. Her name was Patricia Chen, and her voicemail said she specialized in family financial disputes. I left a message explaining my situation in broad terms and asking for a consultation. She called back within 2 hours. "I've reviewed your voicemail," she said, her voice professional but warm. "This type of case is more common than you might think. Can you come in tomorrow afternoon? I have a 3 o'clock opening." I took the appointment, using my lunch break from the clinic to make the arrangements. That afternoon at work, I was distracted enough that one of the doctors noticed. "Doctor," Martinez pulled me aside during a quiet moment. "Everything okay, Jessica? You seem somewhere else today." I hesitated, then decided honesty was easier than pretending. I gave her the abbreviated version of what had happened. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Jessica," she said finally, "I'm going to tell you something I don't share often. My sister did something similar to my parents when they were elderly. She had power of attorney, and she drained their accounts over 2 years. By the time we caught it, they had lost nearly $100,000. My eyes widened. "What did you do?" I reported her. Filed charges. It destroyed our family relationships, but it was the right thing to do. My parents got most of their money back through restitution, and my sister faced legal consequences that finally forced her to get help for her gambling addiction. She looked at me directly. "Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. What your parents did was wrong, and you have every right to pursue justice." Her words stayed with me as I drove to my attorney consultation the next day. Patricia Chen's office was in a downtown high-rise, professional and reassuring. She listened carefully as I walked through everything, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up and nodded slowly. "You have a strong case," she said. "Your parents committed fraud. They used your credit card without authorization, which is theft under Colorado law. The amount puts this in felony territory." The word felony hit me harder than I expected. "I don't want to destroy them," I said quietly. "I just want them to understand that what they did was wrong. I want my money back, and I want it to stop." "Then we'll use that as leverage," Patricia said. "We'll send a formal demand letter outlining the theft, the pattern of financial abuse, and the potential legal consequences. We'll give them 30 days to reimburse you in full. If they comply, we'll consider the matter resolved. If they don't, we file suit and potentially pursue criminal charges." The demand letter was sent certified mail 3 days later. The response came faster than expected. My father called, his voice shaken in a way I had never heard before. "Jessica, we need to talk. Your mother and I would like to meet with you and your attorney." The meeting happened in Patricia's conference room 1 week later. My parents looked smaller somehow, diminished. My mother's hands shook as she placed an envelope on the table. "We're selling some investments," my father said. "We'll have the full amount to you within 2 weeks. We're also setting up a payment plan for the other money we took over the years. It'll take time, but you'll get every penny back." My mother finally looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time in my life, it sounded genuine. "I told myself I was helping the family, but I was stealing from you. I was wrong." 3 months later, on my actual birthday celebration with Andrea, I reflected on everything that had changed. My parents were making their payments religiously. Melissa had started therapy and was working on building her own independence. The family dynamics would never be what they were, but maybe that was a good thing. What they were had been toxic. What they could become might actually be healthy. I raised my glass to Andrea across the table. "To boundaries," I said, "and to finally understanding that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival." She clinked her glass against mine, smiling. "To revenge," she said, "the kind that comes from living well." And as I looked at my life, built by my own hands, supported by people who actually valued me, I realized She was absolutely right.